Today on the Bass Channel, we're comparing the bass chorus offerings from the big three of pedal manufacturing. Okay, so this is the first episode of a new thing that we're toying with, where we are going to compare similar effects from the big three companies. And if you haven't guessed what those companies are, it's Boss, MXR, and Electro Harmonics. So today we are starting our journey with chorus, and as you've probably noticed, it's the CEB-3 versus the Bass Chorus Deluxe versus the Bass Clone. And it should be noted up front that for this comparison, and likely the other big three comparisons moving forward, I'm not paying that much attention to the specific o'clock positions of each knob. Instead, what I'm going to do is have a target sound or idea in mind for each of the four riffs that we showcase and try my best to dial it in each pedal. And the four target tones that I went for in this particular video, I wrote them down here. Of course, we start with straight up that you've already heard. We're gonna go wide and slow, fast and narrow, and another one that I just thought of, Aqueous, because most chorus pedals usually use some kind of liquid or aqua or wet or something like that descriptor to describe their tone. And to be fair, it is a fair descriptor for the tone. So in the Aqueous setting, I went for kind of as wobbly and shimmery and almost seasicky as I could without it becoming actually seasicky, which is yet another water-based term. But I just wanted it to be as intense and as flowing as possible, again, without it being too overbearing. So with that being said, I guess let's check out the Aqueous tone. And as per usual, every tone sample in this video was first recorded directly into the TC Electronic wiretap and reamped through the pedal of the day, which in this case there are three. So let's run down the specs and features of each one of these pedals. We're going to start with the Boss because it's pretty simple and straightforward. So up top we have 4 controls: the effect level, the low filter, the rate, which is the modulation rate of course, and depth, which is the depth of the modulation. It's got stereo outputs with an option to run mono, which is what we're doing here. And of course it comes in the, what I feel is safe to say at this point, bulletproof Boss enclosure. Now I don't know about bullets per se, but I did run a Boss pedal over with a truck one time and pedal didn't even seem to notice, so they're pretty tough. The MXR Bass Chorus Deluxe is an analog chorus delivering the usual suspects of rate, width, or like we saw in the last pedal, depth, same thing, an intensity control, a 2-band EQ so you can independently control bass and treble frequencies, a flanger mode, and a bass crossover switch for tonal flexibility. And despite there being only one output jack, you still can get a stereo sound with this pedal. Select the TRS stereo hardwire bypass mode with the internal switch, and then use a TRS to TSY splitter cable to send the effect to 2 different amplifiers. And finally, we have the Base Clone from Electro Harmonics. Now, as far as the controls go, there's nothing new here. We do have the rate and depth, another 2-band EQ for bass and treble, and the crossover switch. Electro Harmonics says that the Base Clone chorus pedal's core circuitry is nearly identical to the legendary small clone chorus, but with added features especially for bass. The crossover switch cuts low end from the modulated signal, so the pedal delivers a more accurately articulated bottom end with excellent note definition. The treble control affects the whole signal, while the bass control only affects the dry half. Together with the crossover switch, they provide precise sound shaping that let you achieve a tight, focused bass guitar sound with a well-defined low end and shimmering chorus on top. So now that we've heard each of the pedals and we know a little bit more about what they're capable of, let's talk about direct comparisons. Now, I wrote some notes when I was recording the tones for these, so I'm going to defer to these a little bit as we move forward. Okay, so first up, let's start with the Boss. This pedal comes in at $157.99, which is an oddly specific price, but that's what it is as of late August, early September of 2022. And of the 3 pedals in this video, 2 of them are from my personal collection, this being one of them. I've actually used this on record once or twice, and I am a huge fan of Boss Chorus, whether it's the CE2, the CE5, the CE2B, the CE... I'm forgetting the rest of them. What CH1 is the one that I couldn't think of a minute ago, and of course the DC2 Dimension. Now, with that being said, of all the chorus pedals that I just named, this might fall in last place for Boss Chorus for me. And that's because, not that it sounds bad, it's just very subtle. So, even with the controls maxed out, sure, it might still be a little wobbly, but it never... At least I can never get it to be a very huge, obvious chorus sound. So whether that's a pro or con is kind of up to you to decide. It could be a pro if you're looking for just a dead simple, everything at noon, click it because I need chorus, and click it off when I don't. However, if you are more of the adventurous type who likes a little bit more obvious and pronounced chorus sound, this one might not be for you. And also, this could have just been the room yesterday when I was doing the tones, but the shape of the LFO at higher and wider settings, the LFO sweep just felt odd to me. But with that said, my favorite tone is the effect level at 3 o'clock, the low filter at max, and rate and depth just straight up. So again, dead simple chorus. If you just need to click it on and click it off and you don't want to think about it, this is probably the chorus for you. Okay, over to the MXR. It is the most expensive of the three, coming in at $169.99. A little less oddly specific than the Boss. That price makes a little bit more sense. And in my humble opinion, spoiler alert, because I know this is only number 2, I feel this is the best value for the money. It is the most expensive on the list, but it also features the most features. You've got the bass crossover switch, you've got the 2-band EQ, and you've got a flanger mode, which actually sounds pretty good. I think another pro in favor of the MXR is that the light pulses with the LFO rate, so it's pretty easy at a glance to know kind of where about your rate is if you do want it to kind of sync up to the tempo or not. Either way, it's just nice to look down and see the light flashing at the rate of your LFO. However, let's talk cons. I did find, unlike the Boss, which is like almost foolproof, it's like hard to dial in a bad sound on the Boss, it is a little easier to dial in a bad sound here. You can go a little too wide or maybe a little too fast, which again, could be a pro if you are a little bit more adventurous and you do want something that's a little bit more seasick. I hate to use that term like everyone else does, but really, you know, seasick, wobbly, warbly, warped vinyl kind of thing. If that's your vibe, then you'll probably get along better with this one than the Boss. And just a minute ago, I mentioned that 2 of these pedals are from my personal collection. This one is the second. And another thing that I have found, which I'm gonna put in the con list, through the couple years of owning it and messing with it on and off, this pedal does have a capability to kind of sound, I guess, cold. Like, you know that setting when you dial in a flanger a little too much, where there's like maybe a little bit too much feedback and it just sounds kind of tinny and metallic? This pedal does have the capability to kind of start to inch in that territory. Obviously there's a flanger mode in it, but even when you're not on the flanger mode, the chorus kind of can take it into that territory a little bit. Just kind of tiptoes, just knocks on the door of flanger, and then obviously when you push the flanger mode, then you're in full flanger mode. And you can go real tinny if you want. I always really like flangers set a little bit faster and a little bit shallower, more shallow, just to get a shimmering kind of sound, because I like flanger at that kind of setting more than I like chorus. I've always been more of a dimension fan in the chorus, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to the EHX. So the Electro Harmonics is obviously, surprise, surprise, coming in at the most affordable of the 3. As of August, September of 2022, it comes in at $83.50. And I think a huge factor to put it in the pro list is, even though it is the most affordable on the list, it still has a 2-band EQ and it still has a bass crossover switch. Now, I think this is probably where it's gonna get a little confusing, because in my opinion, this pedal is the best and the worst sounding of the 3. Now, what do I mean by that? If you dial it in correctly to a pleasant rate and depth, it sounds really good. I love the small clone chorus. I used to own one when I was primarily a guitar player, and I just love the simplicity of the 1 speed or rate knob and then the 1 switch for however much depth you wanted. It was a lot tougher to dial in a bad sound on it, you know, of course, unless it was faster than you needed, but for the most part, it always sounded really good. And all of those tones and more are in this pedal. The problem that I've found is if you dial it in wrong, it's really bad. And I think that maybe 2 factors. I think that there is too much control of rate and depth. It goes from unusably way too stupidly slow to unusably way too fast, and the same thing with the depth. I think it goes from virtually no depth to way more depth than I think you would ever need, so having everything maxed out is just a ridiculous sound. And with that being said, the feedbacky, flangery territory, I think this is the biggest offender on if you dial it in that way. If you dial it in wrong, it's the most cold, metallic, flangery sound. So oddly enough, it would appear as though kind of the settings under the straight up 12 o'clock all noon position, for what I want to hear out of chorus, being a pretty big chorus fan, it seems like with a lot of the EHX stuff, usually that setting is something under the straight up position. The one pedal that was shockingly true for that concept was the stereo poly chorus, which I owned for, I don't know, a couple months, a few years back. That pedal got out of hand way quicker than this one does. I think my preferred setting was rate almost at minimum for a relatively moderate pace, and depth somewhere at like 8 or 9 o'clock. So like all the knobs were very close to their minimum settings, and anything even close to the straight up position was just like unusably nauseating. So the bass clone is not as bad as the stereo poly chorus in that respect, but it does get out of hand really quickly, so I think it's the best option if you are a little bit more particular and you do want to dial the knob into the millimeter. If you are looking to experiment a little more, then this is the one for you. And of course, if you do dial it in a little bit more conservatively, you know, kind of down below the 12 o'clock position, I think it sounds the best. It's my favorite chorus sound of the three, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best pedal of the three. And to award one of these the best of the three is a tough thing to do because a lot of it really does fall squarely on your needs. But I think the safest bet that might meet most needs is to say that the MXR is probably the winner. It's got the most features, it's got the best qualities of both, and maybe some of the negative qualities of both. It's more versatile than the Boss, but not unusably versatile like the EHX can be. And while it does have some of the tinny flangery kind of sound in there, it's not all the time. It is easy to dial in a very sweet sounding chorus. Maybe not as easy and foolproof as the Boss, but it definitely falls right in between the two of, again, having both of their best and some of their negative qualities right in one box. With all of the extra features built in, like the 2-band EQ, the crossover, having a flanger on board is really cool. So again, it might be the most expensive on the list, but in my humble opinion, I think it is the best value for the money. So again, your ears will always be the best judge in letting you know what's gonna work for your application, but those are just my 2 cents. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, give the video a like, and of course for our members, to show a little extra appreciation for your support, I made each of these 3 pedals into its own individual extended video, so in case you do want a little bit of a deeper dive into one of them, head over to the member section and check that out. But for now, hopefully that was helpful to you, and that's about all I have to say, so I will see you next time.